Hello, I'm Alice Hiller, and I'd like to welcome you very warmly on this summer evening, and likewise all of you who'll be watching the recording in the future. It's a real joy to celebrate three extraordinary bodies of work published this year by Neil Douglas, Jennifer Lee Tsai, and Simon Maddrell. In different ways, each of them draws from personal lived or researched experience. By the alchemy of art making, they transform this material into poems which hold and speak lives beyond their own. In a world beset by division and denial, this is a crucial political as well as aesthetic act, allowing us to enter into relationship with each other through shared acts of imagination and comprehension. We're going to be treated to the gift of three short readings, first from Simon Maddrell, then Neil Douglas, then Jennifer Lee Tsai. After this, I'll be opening a conversation between us, exploring how the poems and collections we've just heard came into being. And then, if there's time, we'll take some questions from the audience. So first up, we're going to have the wonderful Simon, and I will be introducing them before he reads some of his poems. Manx, queer, and openly HIV positive, Simon creates fierce, sensuous, unflinchingly life-filled poems, most recently in his stunning debut, Lamping Wild Rabbits with Outspoken. The poem's deep hinterlands encompass and interrogate both the rugged Manx landscapes of Simon's boyhood and the appalling legalized homophobia which framed his growing up on an island where homosexual acts were only decriminalized in 1992, 25 years after England and Wales. Simon's also an extraordinarily acute reader of Derek Jarman and recorder of his own and other queer histories, reaching back well before his lifetime into the 1940s. Within the world of writing, Simon Maddrell is a Manx poet, editor, and educator. Their work has appeared in 30 anthologies and over 80 magazines, so good going, Simon. He has 7 pamphlets, including Queer Fella, The Whole Island, A Finger in Derek Jarman's Mouth, and Patient L1. Simon's brilliant debut collection, Lamping Wild Rabbits, was longlisted in the 2026 Jerwood Prize for Best First Collections. He's going to share some of his extraordinary poems with us now, and we are all in for a treat. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Alice, for such a generous introduction, and also your generosity in organising this event, and not in the least helping me choose the poems as well. I'm going to start with Nature Poem after Dennis Smith. The leaves have flounced their annual fall. The branches skeleton the sky with an odd fruit. I didn't want to start with leaves adorning the silver birch. I love how they fade to yellow triangles with a sunset pink. No one wants to hear a poem about nature. Much prefer the nature of our bodies. Something easy to blame. Bodies cut at the wrists and bleeding out. How leaves fall to the ground. bury themselves, rot in layers like shame. See how easy it is to mention shame. Is it possible to ban shame even from a gay boy's poem? I walk in the woods, thinking of how the purity of silver barked youth peels daily from its trunk like tissues. How I used to pick at it and gently stroke its skin, how their smooth twigs age and develop warts. There I go again, talking about shame, how the bark matures too and develops dark soil on a gay boy's shoulders, hanging. There I go again, talking about our dead. And if they are not your dead, you are lost to the nature of being. In 1974, UNESCO declared Manx Gaelic extinct, um, but they were a little bit premature. This is our language drips. Our native Igilg was nearly silenced from what only it can express. I nearly zipped my own life in a black-bagged lack of understanding. That it is language that restores our place, that speaks louder than any plinth, that, when it cries, deepens the sea. It is near impossible to describe the sun, to feel its language forming a new dark. The next poem is, I like to call it a golden shovel plus. Um, it's called A Golden Wedding after Essex Hemphill's American Wedding. And the reason why I call it a plus is because actually it's the whole of the first line and the right-hand column is made up of the quotation, which is, they don't know we are becoming powerful. Every time we kiss, we confirm the new world coming. They don't know we are becoming powerful. Every ring we place on a cock belongs. Each time we milk our seed, we heal our sickness, we whisper new. We vow to kiss horsemen naked, not wearing hoods. We honour our brothers and sisters who confirm and not destroy. Our blooming honey is the rosebud drawing in light, seen and being in a new media era. Knowing we now belong in the world, free, loving queers with a dream still coming. And I think it's the second to last poem. It's a very short one. Everything I let go has teeth marks. A parrotfish in the quiet of the night weaves a web across a crevice to get some sleep. During the day, it gnaws coral to death, shits out the bone. Skin is the true edge of my cage. And the last poem. Um, this is interesting for me. I find it interesting that this poem was included in a manuscript review that Aaron Warner did, the ex editor of Poetry London, and he absolutely loved the poem. And he suggested just some minor changes. At that time, it had been submitted 9 times, but I kept going with it. And after the 36th submission, um, it was accepted in Gutter magazine. Back to the soil, dipping hands in every now and then, swapping white roses and chrysanths for black crescent nails in a to and fro with the fingers. I used to want to drown my smell in a car or hang my taste in a garage. But now desire is daffodils and fuchsia. My gardening riddles my fate in practice runs of bonfire ashes and rotting what was once useful in a wooden box. In the meantime, foxglove and lily of the valley are my closest brushes with death. Inside these four walls of bright and shade, shifting as the day edges by and seasons creep to where we cannot tell. Thank you so much.
That was just fantastic, Simon. Really, really an incredible reading. And it's just such a treat to know that your garden is just outside where you're reading. I can see some greenery behind you. In fact, I've been to Simon's flat. Simon's gardens fore and aft is a kind of blossoming experience. And that was really the feeling I had in hearing your reading these really stunning poems rising out of the sort of dark soil of difficult experience. So thank you, Simon. Really wonderful. And so now we're going to come to a slightly different landscape. We're heading towards kind of more in a city, but we're also going internationally. And I'm going to introduce Neil Douglas now. And Neil came to poetry in the wake of a career in community paediatrics and general practice in East London. And for those of you who don't know London, historically, that has been a less materially privileged section of London. Neil therefore formerly worked alongside some of the most vulnerable and least advantaged young and indeed older people in our society. The poems in Ghosts of Former Patients, from which Neil will be reading, are tender, rueful, meticulous, self-interrogating acts of witness that together hold a mirror up to the consequences of our individual and our societal choices, both at home and abroad, as you're going to see. Neil developed his craft as a poet initially through courses at City Lit, later graduating with an MA in creative and life writing from Goldsmiths College. And I have it on personal record from Richard Scott that Richard is a big fan of Neil's work. And Neil's work has appeared in magazines and anthologies in the UK, Hong Kong, North America, and most recently Greece. This year he won the Wildfire, I'm trying to make it more jolly, Wildfire Words ABC competition, who published his debut pamphlet, Ghosts of Former Patients, as an online audio book in June 26. And Neil's going to share some of the poems from this wonderful audiobook. And you can go to their site and you can hear Neil reading the poems. And I think there's going to be a hard copy launch in the autumn. So over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Alice, for that great introduction. And wonderful, Simon, to hear your poems as well. That they were fantastic. The first poem I'm going to read is about children and young people who are refugees. And it was part of my job to do medicals for those young people and children who had just arrived in the UK unaccompanied. So they'd made their way here under their own steam. This is He Told Me. And there's an epigram here from William Osler, which is, listen to your patient. They are telling you the diagnosis. He told me he was from Eritrea. He told me he was 16. I asked if he had any symptoms. He told me his tongue was sore. He told me they paid the driver with hashish to take them across the desert. He told me the driver was stoned. He told me after filling the petrol tank, the jerry can was filled with water for the passengers to drink. He told me the dunes were a mountainous sea. He told me they had clung to the boards. He told me his friend had fallen from the truck. He told me his friend was left to the sand and to the rocks. He told me he had called out. He told me it was the gasoline that had burnt his tongue. My second poem was written during lockdown. And this sort of came about after a conversation with Alice about developing resilience and how important it is to have, especially if you have a history of trauma, how important it is to have people in your life who do not traumatize you and who support you. And as a result of this conversation with Alice, I started asking the children and young people that I was seeing who was important in their life. This poem is His Brother Isaac Laughs. His brother Isaac laughs, asks who is listening when Ishmael says that his mum is next to God in the hierarchy of people known to him, who include Miss Roberts at school, Jasmine and Shani, Ali at the chicken shop, and the older boys who ask him to deliver small packages on his tiny bike to sustainable people with sympathetically restored brickwork, known to him only by the numbers on their doors. And I think when we're sort of working as poets and when we're sort of writing, there's of course this history that is behind us of all the poets that have gone before and the people who influence us. This next poem was inspired by a Kafka short story called A Country Doctor. And I think it's the best account that I've come across in literature of what it's like to visit a patient at home late at night. This poem is called Rosie. Rosie, I arrive out of goodwill 2 days before Christmas. On the doorstep, trip over screw-capped wine bottles, ignore a cracked pane. Slip the passage, your terrier, Brody, nuzzling my crotch with his eager, wet nose as I perch on the edge of a stained sofa in this room where the living is done. Set within easy reach, the Holy Trinity, glass, codeine, lighter. For my benefit, the Benson and Hedges hidden behind cushions supporting your bad back, their existence betrayed by a yellow smog we inhale, exhale, like trees breathing traffic on East Ferry Road. I study your face, a dried riverbed, but for your eyes' flood of sadness, carrying your life downstream in its old leather suitcase. His photograph, framed in gilt, stills the tremor in your nicotine fingers. You never really liked him. Nobody liked him, just loved him beyond reason, with fierce language of bitten tongue, cut lip. I write your prescription longhand. Brody is up on the sofa in my ear. He tells me she is broken, demands the impossible of this doctor. She is broken. Mend her. Make her good. And my last poem was written towards the end of my career in general practice. And it's after a poet called Donna Stonecipher, who wrote a book called Model City. And in that book, she posed the question, what was it like? So this poem is what it was like for me towards the end of my time in general practice. Morning Clinic 55, after Donna Stonecipher. It was like climbing the ladder up to the flying trapeze at the circus and standing on a platform opposite the patient who is waiting to take off on their trapeze, trembling, makeup melting in dust speckled spotlight, hearing the crowd go quiet. It was like climbing the ladder up to the flying trapeze and waiting for the patient to swing toward you on their trapeze, knowing they would let go, somersault, and you, hanging upside down, gripping the bar with your flexed knee, would have to catch them. It was like climbing the ladder up to the flying trapeze, knowing the patient is trusting you to catch them, that you have rehearsed the catching 10,000 times, but you have not chalked your hands for a better grip, and your hands are damp with sweat. It is letting the patient's outstretched hands slip from your grip because your hands are damp with sweat, hearing the crowd gasp as they watch the patient fall past the safety net to a tangle of limbs, while you look down from the height of your flying trapeze. Thank you very much for listening.
That was absolutely breathtaking, Neil. Really, the first time I met Neil, he was reading, he told me, and it just had such an impact on me. And I continue to be sort of dumbstruck by Neil's work and by its delicacy and by its precision and also by its vulnerability. I think the fact that the doctor is always vulnerable and imperfect is where, we feel the engagement as listeners, as readers. And what you read tonight in conjunction with Simon was a magnificent gift, Neil. I really thank you. And finally, this brilliant set of readings is going to turn to Jennifer Lee Tsai. Her radically beautiful and breathtaking debut, Milete, which I might pronounce wrong, published by Blood Axe, takes the dual language, dual heritage experience of growing up British Chinese on the Wirral and in Liverpool as the starting point of its interrogation, sorry, of what it can mean to form a creative identity and body of work within a society that doesn't always welcome you. Sorry. I think my body is internalizing the sense of hostility that Jennifer's poems also hold, but transform. I'm going to drink some water. And transform. I'm sorry about that. So, moving between poems, micro essays, prose poems, childhood memories, and family memories of the brutality of Chairman Mao's China. Malete engages the body as a conduit to realizing selfhood, and music, using music and other art forms as guides along the way. Like Simon and Neil's work, Malete is a collection to read and reread, as I've been doing ever since it was published earlier this year. Jennifer Lee Tsai has been a Fellow of the Complete Works and a Ledbury Poetry Critic. Her poetry and criticism have been widely published. Her pamphlets are Kismet and La Mystérique. She's received a Northern Writers Award and won a Rebecca Swift Poets Prize while teaching and lecturing in universities, colleges, and community settings. Jennifer's currently artist in residence at the Blue Coat and a PhD candidate at the University of Liverpool. Malete was longlisted for the Jerwood Forward Prize. But what you really want to do now is hear Jennifer read.
Thank you so much, Alice, for that incredibly generous and warm introduction, and for organising this reading and for creating such a beautiful space in Voicing Our Silences. I know that I feel incredibly lucky and nurtured and nourished by this beautiful space, and that everybody who is a member of this collective feels so too. So thank you for facilitating the space. And also thank you, Simon and Neil, for those incredibly powerful and moving readings. Yeah, I'm just really feeling it, from both of you. Thank you for that. My first poem is called Being the Other. It is the year 1999, midwinter in the Georgian Quarter. Eldridge streets, Huskisson, Faulkner, Canning, illuminated by the glow of Victorian lampposts, coloured lights through sash windows. You would think you were somewhere in a bygone period of history, lingering remnants of empire, concealed crimes, violences implicit and explicit. Meliti flags down a black cab to go home to the neon-lit takeaway where she lives with her family. 2 houses converted into one. Trains rushing past at the end of Ginnells. Her boyfriend kisses her before she leaves. Her body responds to the heat of his embrace. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Passion, sweeter than wine, revivifies her. She tries to remember a time when she did not feel separated from her body, a stranger to it, estrangement from one's identity, a flight, a descent, misunderstood by a beloved but forgetful, discreet, or anxious mother. The exile is a stranger to her mother. She does not call her, asks nothing from her. Thus, the foreigner has lost her mother. Meliti is reading Wide Sargasso Sea. Antoinette is leaving Colibri. The house is burning. Yellow-red sky like sunset. Nothing would be left. The golden ferns and the silver ferns, the orchids, the ginger lilies and the roses, the rocking chairs and the blue sofa, the jasmine and the honeysuckle. She sees her friend Tia and her mother. Momentarily she thinks, I will live with Tia and be like her. Not to leave Colibri, not to go. But tears throws a jagged stone at her. They stare at each other. Blood on my face, tears on hers. It was as if I saw myself, like in a looking glass. Meliti looks at herself in the mirror. What do people see? A Chinese girl. Will you always be seen as other in a country where you are born? Who are you when you are another? She does not know that she is an other, living in a world of books, music, some kind of love which makes her feel connected to the world. It is mental, but she feels it. She feels she is an other. Like Antoinette, she cannot fully know her mother tongue, but she can speak the language of the colonizer. Maddening to live in a different country forever, to lose something for a long time. A secret wound drives her to wandering. Wandering stars. My next poem is called The Recuperation of Fragments. I have been fragmenting for years. Shattered bits of a broken rainbow, the pursuit of a fantasy, an endless fugue. Kiss me, my darling. Where have you been all my life? The first death. After the first death, there is no other. You are 21 when you die for the third time, descend to a velvet darkness, soft and suffocating, a lull, a stupor. He held you there, didn't he? His embrace all enveloping, deadly grip. You become smaller and smaller, a little bird, wing beating, fluttering, fragile thing. He could break you so easily. The smoke surrounds you both. Inhale, exhale, the fragrant smoke rising like incense. You are falling into a tunnel, a cavern. You are lost in the underworld. You remember the light caving in, his smile, his story spinning over you like a golden thread. You are lost in the labyrinth with the Minotaur. Where is Theseus? You don't want to be, Ariadne. But monsters can be so fascinating. You remember it was raining. The streets are ghostly. There are ghosts on the street corners haunting you wherever you turn. The wind turns the autumn leaves over and over again, like a plaintive melody. The notes fall, and you are falling. You are fallen. He held you there, pinned down. It was no use to struggle. His seductive words in your ear. Slowly, the dose is administered, and the tears run down your cheeks. Ah, you are coming into contact with your pain at last. You are confronting it, your desires, your wretched desires. Eat me, drink me, descending to the baseness of your desires. Simone Weil writes of going down to the roots of our desires in order to tear the energy from its object. This is where the desires are true, insofar as they are energy. It is the object which is unreal. But there is an unspeakable wrench in the soul at the separation of a desire from its object. You remember he talked to you of his soul and your soul, of the spirit, of the eagle spirit soaring high. You remember the blood, the cutting, the release, the relief of being alive, the desire for sweet oblivion, blood in the purple bathroom, the portrait of J.H. Lynch's Tina, woodland nymph, goddess, voluptuously leaning towards you, carnal. Dying can be so sweet. La petite mort. You want to die again and again, to be brought back to life. He has become your savior, and you feel indebted always. You will dwell in half-lit light, twilight, for almost 10 years. When you're ready, to relinquish your past. Come find me. And you found another him at last, the original one. Like Jesus, he's a wild son. You are his mistress, his Mary Magdalene. I wasn't going to read this next poem, but I was being inspired by the conversation that we had earlier about fruit and food. So I am going to read this. So this poem is called I Write the Orange. I guess it is a tribute to the act of writing, and it's also inspired by my love of the French feminists. I Write the Orange, after Helene Cixous. I write to go to the very centre of orange, orange overflowing with joy, orange spilling over with juice, sweet orange staining my fingers and toes, the sticky nectar of orange. I write to taste the flesh of orange, to moan with all the fibres and pith of orange, orange segments, the zest and delight of orange, my whole being to surrender to orange. I am eating an orange as I write this, a perfect globe, followed by a cacao orange nut bar with orange cordial. I could feed you blood oranges and green tea with orange pieces from China. I could persuade you that oranges are indeed the only fruit, a superfruit. We could sit on a patchwork quilt of orange, tango to a clockwork dance of orange. My first taste of orange, it was orange spreading over me, rapturous blaze, a torrent, a haze. The love of the orange is political too. I write to receive the benediction of the orange, to live the orange and be the orange, vibrant, pulsing, exploding. I write to celebrate the orange, unsilence the orange, unforget the orange, unearth the orange, unblind the orange, undeafen the orange. I write to speak orange, to scream and shriek orange. My beloved's favourite shirt, an erotic burnt orange which flared like the ardent sun of their presence. A favourite dress that I wore for him, tangerine dream orange, besmirched with the oriental poppies of saffron. I was his orange prize, his peach trophy, his amber muse. I can be a brazen hussy, a coquette, a harlot for the power of orange. I throw down my gauntlet to defend my orange. I open my mouth to speak my operatic orange. I am brilliant, fluorescent orange. I am luminescent, triumphant orange. I can orange you if I want to. Orange glow, orange flow, orange below. Tell me what you know about orange. Thank you so much.
That was just the most wonderful reading and the most wonderful conclusion. And having been through such tough places to come out into that real joy was just such a gift. Thank you so much, Jenny. I really, really loved that and felt very orange. And I particularly love orange fruit myself. So really wonderful. We're now, I mean, and it's really interesting how the poems, the readings flow in and out of each other. We're now going to actually flow into each other in actual conversation, moving to the second part of our evening when we think about the mechanics and processes of bringing our work into being as something beyond a single or a personal experience. And the first thing I wanted to think about was the act of staging the poem as a space where the reader and the artwork and the creator meet. And I think that's it's sort of really interesting if you think of the poem as a little stage on the play, and each of you have kind of recurrent stages that we, the readers, recognize, and we sort of sense the, the argument, the discussion going deeper with each layering. So, Simon, I wanted to talk to you or ask you really about gardens as gardens in Lamping Wild Rabbits. They sort of stage a series of encounters between you and nature, or rather between the speaker and nature, the speaker in the past, the speaker in the future, the speaker and a rogue mouse. Would you like to just talk about a little bit about how you've used gardens in the collection?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, um, I think when I write poetry, no, I think I know when I write poetry, I like um, the poems to be based on a truth rather than. I don't think I'm very creative in the sense of inventing something completely out of nowhere. So, sort of that the observation of the garden and the self-observation of being in the garden provide um, provide a start point for a poem, I think. Um, um, they provide that impetus for one. Um, I wrote a recent poem. I actually saw a mouse in the from my back door. I saw a mouse literally running around chasing its own tail like a cat. It was the most extraordinary thing, and of course, it became the start point of a poem. But what happens, I think, um, if you use whatever little nugget um, of fact or place that you create and really dive into it, that it transforms itself into something else, which is why a lot of the time my poems are 14-line poems, and they'll have that volta into something else. Um, or you may spot that really in sort of focusing on um you know the the holiness of minute particulars, as Blake would say, did say. Um, often you find that often I find that it ends up speaking to a much the description, it's like an ode, if you like, the old classic ode in describing the place and the environment within which I exist with love and passion. Um, it's really saying something else rather than um my compost bin isn't really my compost bin, for example.
And I think it's also that constraint. Rather than writing about the whole of nature, you put the garden walls around it in a way, and actually it sort of facilitates the going deep. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so, and no, that's really interesting to hear. And Neil, I mean, the constraint in Ghost of Former Patients is really the doctor-patient relationship that we come at again and again and again, in different settings. And we know nothing. Well, the doctor gets anxious. We only know the doctor in terms of their relationship to the patients. The doctor has no real identity beyond that, and we only know of the patients what they show the doctor in that sort of narrow frame. And yet everything
Mm.
opens up, as we saw in your poems, from that constraint. Whole lives open. So I wondered about. I know you've written other sorts of poems, but I wondered about that doctor-patient constraint, how that was for you.
Yeah, I think I often think about the medical poems I write as consultations, and the consultation room is a stanza, and you go through these multiple episodes of consultation. So you have several stanzas, and sometimes they're related to each other, and sometimes they're not. So everything is written within the sort of confines of that idea. Um, I think the thing that's most difficult, though, is to be very mindful of the duty of confidentiality that a doctor has.
Absolutely.
And the medical poems I write, I've had to change details about the patients so as not to identify them. And some of the poems are composites, so they're combinations of several different sort of patients. So I think when you're writing, you're constrained by that, writing as a doctor.
Yes. But I think also what we get is that we, through that constraint and also through that anonymization, or, departicularizing an identity, we get a sense of a kind of almost universal truth beneath it. Many children have come over, across the dunes on lorries. Many lonely old ladies have taken to drink, or lonely old men and lonely old non-binary people, for that matter. I mean, funnily enough, in a way, the constraint is also a freedom into creating a much wider reach for the poem, as I experience it, which is a bonus in a way. So that came to me. But no, that's really interesting. And Jenny, I wanted to ask you about, I mean, there's so much to talk about your work, and we could just be here forever. But I wanted to ask you specifically about the stern line you take on Liverpool, because Liverpool, Beatles City, Port City, Slaver City, you're having none of it. I mean, you may acknowledge those things. This is the oldest Chinatown in Europe. This is a place in which your two very different sets of grandparents arrived. I experience Liverpool totally differently through your poems, and it's wonderful. And like it's an act of reverse colonization. It's like it's colonized my imagination in a fantastic way, and also in a very generous way. It gives me insights into, as I say, the experience of arriving from China. Your father or the speaker's father and uncle, swim across this very dangerous strait. A kind of grandfather comes who can barely speak about what they've seen under Mao. And these are all part of Liverpool's stories. So tell me about rewriting Liverpool in your magnificent way.
Thanks, Alice. That's such a thoughtful question. I think that when I first started writing, and writing poetry in particular, then I felt there was really a lack of representation of British Chinese people and British Chinese immigrants, and that was definitely something that I wanted to counter and bring to light. So, of course, what I write about is very personal, and it draws upon my own personal family history. So I'm not claiming to speak for all British Chinese people, but I definitely am writing out of my personal experience and out of um, my personal family histories as well, but in a way that I hope honors them, and also recuperates fragments of narratives. And I do so by various means. So some of it is through research, so researching into Liverpool's history, and some of it is pieced together from conversations that I have with my mum and with other family members, and also friends as well, so other British Chinese friends. Um, so yeah, and I don't think it's been an easy thing to do. And I guess that in the writing of my poems, then there are things that I also encounter and discover, which are personal, well, obviously personal, but also painful as well. But I think that, my hope is that through writing it, then there is a movement towards healing and recuperation and recovery and reclamation of self as well, and reclamation of people who I don't think have been truly acknowledged or seen at times, in the roles that they've played in British society and history. So I do have a poem which does give a positive view of Liverpool, which I didn't read today. So that poem, funnily enough, was a commission. It was a commission by Liverpool Art Biennial, and the poem is called, well, the poem was inspired by the theme of bedrock. And yeah, I guess that poem, is just acknowledging, what British Chinese immigrants have contributed to Liverpool as a port, and acknowledging its maritime history.
Yeah. But as I say, Liverpool gets much better for me, for you writing about it. It's a much fuller, more interesting city. And just you, I know you experiment with the novel. You have an incredible ability to capture detail. Your grandfather in his suit in the cafe with his slice of angel cake there. The city is new to me in your words, and that's one of the gifts of writing as far as I'm concerned. You slightly touched on the next topic I wanted to ask you all about, which was research. I know in different ways there's a lot of research underpinning your work. For Neil, it's slightly different as a doctor, but medicine is an evidence-based practice with protocols. So I'd just be interested to hear, starting with Simon, about the research underpinning your work.
I mean, I think there's a lot more there's a lot more research in my other work, to be honest. I mean, if we think about the whole island.
Yeah, no. I mean, across the body of your work, not just these poems. Absolutely.
Yeah, so um, writing about the Isle of Man very much requires research into history, politics, folklore, language, and the detailed facts around the detailed facts. I mean, there's so much rich history and culture and stuff in the Isle of Man that it's almost like a walking through a field of prompts, you know. Um, 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 so from that respect, sort of the ideas then prompt all of those, prompt the research to know more, to be able to, if you like, to be able to write the poem, and to discover in the writing of the poem how that detail creates resonances to personal experience or not. I mean, my other side of the work is much more about I mean, sort of queer Manx history or people like Derek Jarman, like Dercy McLinden, who was an inspiration for the drama It's a Sin, but was pretty much erased from Isle of Man history. And Alan Shea, who's the Manx gay rights campaigner, they research in that regard is really getting to know more about the person. In Lumpy Wild Rabbits, there's a selection of the poems from A Finger in Derek Jarman's Mouth, which primarily was actually an absorption into his garden, and that irony of the fact that his has no walls and mine has four, but also the fact that I've taken a lot of inspiration from his garden and my garden, the black shed with the yellow windows, and the hanging stones and all those things. So the Jarman work was, even though of course I've got the wider awareness of his work, and there was two massive art exhibitions in 2020 and 2021. That those poems were sort of came out of that sort of research, although fingers crossed, I'm hoping to get a residency at Prospect Cottage, in which case I'm going to write the follow-up, which is going to be called A Foot in Derek Jarman's Back Door, which is really going to focus on the exploration of the internal, um, which again will involve a lot of research, and I'll probably read the whole of Modern Nature while I'm there, and if I get it, fingers crossed. But so there's, I mean, I'm very. I think research is into it's either a route to better explore something which is of interest or resonance, or it's because we feel a passion for some stories that need to be told. And as you well know, I mean, I've got a very, very passionate belief in the fact that we lost almost a full generation of gay men in the 80s and the 90s, and that created a gaping hole in the stories. It created a gaping hole in the way that memories, not only how memories were passed on and stories were passed on, but also, I never had that gay uncle to teach me how to live in a world that was hostile to my existence. All that I actually got was a reminder of how hostile to the existence this world was. So I actually, people who grew up in that time lost in both ways. And there are so many stories not told there, and I just feel very passionate that they need to be told. And in many ways, thinking about it now, it's very healing to do so, because I'm almost going back to hearing the things and learning the things that I should have been taught at the time. But yeah, so sorry, probably spoke for too long, but
No, I think it really that was a fantastic answer. And I think it's that sense of, research as an act of kind of an invisible substructure of politicizing work, bringing awareness, deeply informing, taking away almost from the single lyric perspective into one that encompasses an awareness of others. And for me, that's a very powerful act. Neil, do you have any thoughts on research?
Yeah, my main research, because I don't have a background in literature at all, and hadn't for many, many years. So my research was reading other poets and really trying to find a way to express what I wanted to say in my poems by looking at other people. And I think, for instance, William Carlos Williams was a big influence on me, and particularly his medical poems, because he wrote in a way that was conversational.
Yeah.
And it was like ordinary speech. So that's something I took from him in particular, was trying to introduce the rhythm of ordinary speech into what I was writing, so that people could perhaps relate to it sort of better. My other big influence for other poetry has been Emily Berry, because she combines the sort of unusual and sometimes surreal with a real feeling for putting across sort of the emotional content of what you're trying to get across, and varying your writing to what you want to say. So that's what I would say really is my research. Yeah.
And it worked beautifully. You taught yourself to be a poet by being a kind of researcher. But that's really lovely to hear. And also, like again, that substructure of other voices, of other examples, sort of opening the door for you, because you were writing before you did your MA or anything like that. So that's a brilliant reply. Thank you so much. And I think people will
Thank
find
you.
that really helpful. Jenny, how about you? Where does research stand for you?
It's a great question. And yeah, I think it feeds into my work in various ways. So I think one of the poems that reflects quite a lot of research is a long poem which appears towards the end of Meliti, which is called British Chinese, British Southeast Asian Citizen, after Claudia Rankine's Citizen. And for this poem, which is a long poem sequence in sections, so it explores various macro and micro aggressions directed towards East Asian people. So particularly during the pandemic and the hate crimes that occurred, in the States, with the shootings of the East Asian women, um, and um, and also public tragedies that have occurred in recent years in the UK. So there was the Morecambe Bay Cockling disaster in 2004, the deaths of 58 Chinese immigrants in a lorry in Dover in 2000, and the 39 Vietnamese migrants who were found dead in a lorry trailer in Essex in 2019. So in writing about those public tragedies, so it was essential for me to undertake research in bearing witness to these tragedies and doing it in a way which reflects the truth. And also, I've also undertaken research when I write about myth as well. So I guess in terms of the structure of my book, so my book has a mythic structure, which draws upon the three original Boeotian muses. Meliti, who is the muse of meditation and contemplation, Nimi, who's the muse of memory, and Edie, who is the muse of song and voice. So in using those muses as a device to structure my book, then I also had to undertake research into them, which was a really joyful undertaking and exciting discovery for me. I think there are also certain poems in Meliti which use myth as well. So specifically Chinese myth. So for that, I also had to undertake research, because, being born in the UK, so I don't really have direct access to those myths in a way. So there's the myth of the moon goddess, the myth of Nuwa, who's a creation myth goddess. And also, I think in thinking about Liverpool as well, so thinking about people and places, and the significance of those people and places in terms of Liverpool's colonial history, the history of slavery in Liverpool. And one of the poems that I also undertook research for was a poem which is called Vivian Lee's Negligee, which was a commission for the Ram Museum in Exeter and Renaissance One. And so we had to choose an object or an artifact in the museum's collections. So I chose Vivian Lee's negligee. So for that, I had to undertake research into the history of that garment, what it meant to Vivian Lee, and it sort of led me on a journey of discovery in writing that poem. So yeah, I think research definitely informs my work in a variety of ways.
Well, it's another very rich and also generous reply in the sense it's giving other people avenues to follow. I think we might now just see if there are any questions from anyone else. Julie, can you unpin us? And we'll get Ithaca is commenting on a fox. We'll see if there are any other questions, and then I'm going to thank everyone. But it's been such a rich, rich evening, and I'd love to just as a see if anyone else would like to ask anything. And if you'd like to ask something, just raise your hand and then unmute yourself, please. So everyone seems to be just very happy listening. No, well, it's just been if there are no further questions, we've done our hour, which was our aim, and it's just been one of the best evenings of the year for me. I really thank everyone who's here, everyone who will listen in the future, but most of all, I thank Neil, thank Simon, and I thank Jenny. These have just been the most incredible poems to hear, both read and to hear talked about. I am going to go away and think about this. I'm going to listen to this recording again. And my love for your books is only sort of growing greater. She's shuffling around to find the books, trying to get them the right way up. But really, I think, read the comments after. It's just been an incredibly precious evening. And ask your libraries for these books, buy these books. It doesn't matter how you get hold of them. Getting them through libraries is excellent because other people can also read them as well. But thank you to everyone who came. Thank you for this wonderful time. And thank you above all to our speakers. And would everyone like to unmute themselves and clap very loudly? So
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And apologies for the coughing. So.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Especially Alice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.